Hello everyone, Dusty here. I'm excited to announce that KitchenTableMeta is collaborating with Popo's Kitchen, a new site specializing in Dragon Ball Super singles. They have everything from Set 1 tournament promos to Union Force and even Dash Pack promos. And if that wasn't enough, you can even trade in your old cards for credit. Do you have a playset of Sensu beans you're not using? Turn them into credit and buy that shiny Jiren. Don't forget to tell them Dusty sent you by using the code KitchenTableMeta at the checkout to save 10% on your entire order.
You don't have to say anything. Okay. What else? South Carolina.
Uh-oh, guys. Here we go. Episode 3 of the Supercast with my special guest, once again, Mr. Aaron Anthony. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
How you doing today? Doing good?
I'm doing great, man. It's crazy that, wedding last week, wedding this week, set 2 coming out this week, so it's a lot of exciting stuff.
Jeez, you got married twice already?
No. Well, 2 for my friends, but yeah. Divorced and remarried again.
Right.
Drives me crazy.
I hear you, man. I hear you. That's what you got to do. After so many years, you have to trade them in for a new model, right? That's what I always tell my wife.
Exactly.
She just laughs at me because she's way hotter than me, so... Okay, so guys, well, tell me a little bit about your week. We didn't get to see you last week, Aaron. So I know you had a big tournament there at your shop and stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Dragon Ball in your area? How did everything go this week and last week?
Yeah, so last week we had, I think, the sneak peek. Well, Sunday I should say. Had the sneak peek, and which from what I heard went really well. A lot of good feedback on it. I wasn't there because obviously I was in Florida, but I heard a lot of good things. People like the idea of not having any specified energy to pay for things, to know like things were like free energy. People love the idea of just like there were no negates because it was all like set 2 stuff and like no 10K boosters. So it was definitely an interesting format for sure, that people were actually enjoying the heck out of the game, just from just more of like a competitive to like casual blend of playing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I tell you, it's cool. Been seeing all the new the rules come in, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, it's been neat to see all those new rules, all those new, changes and stuff. I love FAQs for some reason. It's like I love going through them and seeing, how because every time you see a card, you always try to guess what you think it's going to do, or try to make the best decision you can. And a lot of the times FAQs clear them up, and it's just really cool to see. So I'm really excited to talk about that once we get into the cast here a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that, and just to know what people's thoughts are on the cards. I have a couple of opinions myself on certain things, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see how the FAQ really defines the format, defines what people play when they go to tournaments, because rulings are a big part.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, well, we got a couple things to get through, so we'll go ahead and jump right in. We're a little bit late too, guys. Apologize for that. We had a couple issues with the stream there at the beginning, so we'll get everything situated. I hope you guys like the new intro there. Hope I got you guys all hyped up and get ready to go into Super Saiyan here. Let's get into this cast. The first thing we'll talk about, guys, is we're going to talk a little bit about test prep. And again, it's November. Happy November, everyone. I hope everyone had a good Halloween. And so again, Aaron, I'll let you talk a little bit about it, but essentially this month is the month for the judge test, and I know we have a lot of interest in judges. We had Jim on the channel last week, and he said over 100 people applied to be a judge for the ARG events on the first day. And so obviously there's a lot of, people excited for it. And I guess out of those 100 people, only like 90 or so, only like 5 or 10 actually had experience. And so we have a lot of new judges for this game, which is very exciting. I'm super pumped about that. And so I thought it'd be fun if me and Aaron kind of went through some of the basic rules we think people maybe mess up, and kind of talk a little bit about what we think you guys should be studying for if you want to pass this test the first try. Look like a scholar by passing this the first try. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, I believe, how judging is super, super important to any card game, just because, when people hear about card games, a lot of people want to not just play with their friends, but test their skills against other people, which requires some overhead. It requires some structure, requires, people who know about the game in and out to be able to assist. And, the judge program for sure is something that I'm really looking forward to, and I'm excited to see that so many players signed up for it. It's definitely breathtaking and kind of surprising, which is good. And what we want is not just the quantity, but also the quality. We want like good quality judges. We want to make sure people know their stuff, so that way they're not kind of like passing the buck. I know when I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh, when I would have like a certain question to a judge, they would kind of just pass it over to someone else if they didn't know it. And it's kind of like, how long is that going to take and whatnot. So it's really good that people are kind of stepping up, and whether they're um, motives or for promos or whatnot, I'm not here to decide that, but I'm just glad that they're at least taking the first step to kind of judging and making the game and the community better.
Right. No, I actually will say something about that. I'm glad you kind of brought that up. I actually feel like if you guys, if you're interested in judging because of promos, you're in it for the completely wrong reason, guys. This isn't the reason to do that. And I think it's great for companies to incentivize, and reward their judges, but please don't do it just because of that, because then you kind of muck up the system. Sometimes, they won't approve judges because they think there's too many judges in your area, and really make sure that somebody that wants to judge is the person judging. Like he said, don't pass off questions to other people if you don't want to take time to learn the game yourself. If you have a question, that's great, but make sure you're learning. I've seen a lot of people just like you said, somebody would come and ask them a question, they'll be like, go ask this guy, get away from me. Like I'm not here to answer questions. That's not right. Also, guys, another big mistake I see, especially with Magic, is people, they become judges because they love the power of it, right? They want to be able to be the authority, they want to be able to boss people around, and that's absolutely not the right reason to be judges. And so please do not be a judge for those two reasons. Be a judge because you want to help people learn the game, because in reality that should be your main goal, and that's how we grow this awesome game.
Exactly.
So the question is, what are the rules with judging and participation? Well, I'll let Aaron answer his. I know locally, usually if I judge an event or I run an event, I try very, very hard not to play in the event. Now, that's not usually the rule. I know most games don't care unless it's a super competitive event, like a Magic. If it's a really high-level event like a GP or something, you're not supposed to play. I actually don't think you're even allowed to play. But in most games like Pokemon and stuff like that, you can play as long as it's a lower-level event. And I think that's going to be mostly what we do for this game. Now, for regionals, again, I don't know. I don't think Jim has made an official announcement, but I would imagine that you won't be allowed to play if you're a judge for ARG either. So, I think if you're just doing a little like, BCC battle in your local, go ahead and play. That's fine. A lot of times if there's an odd number, I'll play too, just so that way, like, we don't have buys or something. So like if 9 people show up, I'll play. So I'll be the 10th person, but I won't play if I'll be the 11th person. I always try not to play if possible.
Yeah, same here. In the same way, I only really judge unless it's to make things pretty much even, in a literal sense, and figuratively. So really just to make sure that, good healthy tournament. And again, like I said, like last week or I think 2 weeks ago, like I never got any like compensation, because again, the tournament kits have been rolling out since the game pretty much started, and judges never got anything. So I've always been judging like the ARG in New Jersey and stuff like that, and never, you go into these things knowing because you just want to kind of make a difference, not so much of what you can get out of it. So I just do it, just to either help boost the numbers if it's odd to make it even, and or maybe take a week for myself off because if I want to go and maybe play an event, because we have our tournaments Tuesdays and Sundays is like my time to relax with my family, so I don't judge on Sundays. I don't even play Super on Sundays. It's just my church family day kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's really just Tuesdays I judge, and then Tuesdays since I'm mainly judging and I don't play on Sundays, I don't really play locally at all. So but it is what it is. I just want to know that any ruling questions people might have, you want to make sure these events run smoothly. And then eventually, like the more people that you get, you'll eventually find someone who will be like, hey, I can definitely judge on a Tuesday or so. And then, you kind of help them, shape them up to be a judge like where you are. And that way, you can eventually play in tournaments as well. So.
Oh, no, for sure. I'll tell you something else. We have a question that says, if you're new to TCGs, what's the best way to get into judging? How is the time commitment? And I will tell you this, guys, with anything that you want to do at a high level, the time commitment is always, it's a hobby, right? It's always going to be there. There's not like, I can sit down and study for 3 hours, or I can just look at the rules once or twice and now I know everything. TCGs are ever evolving. They're always changing. The new sets are always come out. Erratas happen. Sometimes balance changes happen. There's tons of things that can happen. It's a very organic thing to be a judge, or even just a player, honestly, because so much stuff is changing. But as far as getting into judging, it's not that difficult, guys. You just jump in and let everybody know you're new. No one's gonna be mad at you for trying, right? And so if you want to go to your local and you want to judge, and you guys already have a judge, just tell the judge, be like, hey, I want to judge too. Can I watch you? Can I shadow you? Can I follow you around and see how you make calls? What's some of the hard calls you have to make? What are some of the basics of this? And if you don't have a judge, just tell your local, be like, hey, I'm interested in being a judge. Can I try to judge? If I mess up, that's no big deal. And also, I do want to talk, about to Aaron. We've been talking a little bit in the past about maybe starting like a section or a group for new judges that want to, essentially message us questions that we can answer. So like if you're at a local and you're wanting to learn, and let's say someone asks you, hey, how does counters work? Can you play multiple counters in one turn? And you can't find it, you can just message that group or message, that forum, and we'll just answer your questions, which we already have a couple of those. I'll let Aaron talk about that. But Aaron, what do you think is the best way to get into judging, and what do you think the time commitment's like?
Yeah, judging definitely takes and again, all the stuff like we're doing, everyone here, like what Dusty's doing, what I'm doing, what a lot of content creators do, a lot of it's on the free time. So to know like judging is also time that when you spend to do it, you want to kind of do it and fulfill a certain plan. You want to have like kind of goal in mind. You just want to, okay, I'm a judge, and then just kind of that be the end of it. So you want to kind of go into it knowing that, if you're judging, you really want to brush up on the latest rules, and it might change back and forth, especially when a new set comes out, because, which we'll get into, about the FAQ and all that stuff. But just being able to waver and just kind of go with the flow. Rulings change all the time. Card effects and interactions always kind of fluctuate and things like that. So it's just being able to go with the flow and just at least get the basic core of the game, and then everything else kind of falls into place. So if you kind of know like the bread and butter of, okay, like when I attack, my turn doesn't end, I can still do other stuff. Just understanding how the basic game mechanics, which is like the skeleton, and then the flesh, which is basically all the like rulings and the overlays, would definitely fall into place. So it takes time, but if you're willing to learn, again, we want to also make an environment where people can just ask other judges or other people who are trying to strive to know more about the game and judge for their community to really also assist and kind of help if you like are stuck on like a certain question or ruling. I see it as fun, like a puzzle. I like puzzle games and things like that. So, it's like, here's the problem, what's the solution kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. All right. So let's move into the test prep here a little bit. What do you think, Aaron? If you're prepping for this test, if you're taking the test tomorrow, what would you think that you would suggest people to have knowledge of before they move into this test prep? What do you think are the key important things that they could study?
Yeah, I think one of the key important things is definitely timing, knowing the counter windows, knowing when to activate certain things, when you can, when you can't, knowing when you can awaken. Some people think it's my opponent's turn, so I can just awaken. There's a certain order and procedure to certain things. So really knowing the layout and the flow of the mechanics of the game. I think the main important thing is the counter window, like knowing when you can counter. Also knowing the resolution of effects. So if you have one thing activated, like can I do something else and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Now I know we had a very interesting discussion in the judge group with the Vegeta counter card, which I think was a perfect example of counter timing, where you said, I think someone was playing Vegeta out, and maybe they were asking about Cold Bloodlust. If they Cold Bloodlusted after you've played it, does it still kill something? And everyone was like, yeah, it's a counter, of course, because counters would come before everything else. And then we're like, wait a second. Only playing it is the counter, the actual effect of auto. And so maybe it doesn't work like that. And we had this huge discussion about, which I thought was awesome. It's so funny how one line of text really changes everything. And you're 100% right. You really need to understand the timings, when stuff happens, when stuff comes into play. I think a lot of players really feel like that as soon as they play something out, it's there, right? Like you missed your opportunity, or I've already done it. You know what I mean? But it's like, no, there is an order of operations for sure. I also think turn structure is something that people need to realize. I know I've seen a lot of people not understand what all you can do in a turn. I know it sounds really basic, but the turn structure is really important. Understand that there is a charge phase. We actually have a card now that actually takes advantage of the main phase, and so it's important to remember, there's two phases in your opponent's turn. It's not just one entire turn.
Yeah, I know playing Yu-Gi-Oh for years, there was a lot of different phases, and knowing your phases was very important. Knowing when you can activate stuff, and which would change a whole line of play. So you had your draw phase, which like once your opponent draws, you can respond with like a quick play spell or a trap card. When your opponent enters the main phase, when they enter battle phase, when they enter main phase 2, when they end phase. Right. So like every phase, and it's probably like that in Magic too. I would assume I never played much with Magic, but I know coming from Yu-Gi-Oh background, every phase you had to know your phases, because you can know certain timings where a person who's not as experienced wouldn't know that you can activate this card during like your opponent's draw phase or during their standby phase or something like that. So in this game, it's very important too because we have cards that would say at the end of your opponent's turn, at the end of it could be at the end of a main phase or whatever the case may be. Who knows how elaborate it might get, but to know your phases is very important, especially like when it comes to like the combo step or even just like battle in itself.
Right, that's actually a good point too. That's something else I think is understanding the difference between active main and active battle. I've seen a lot of people mess that up, especially with the new Gohan leader. That's something people are like, I don't like it. You can just counter them, and it's like, well, you can't counter them because you do it after the counter timing has stopped. So yeah, definitely making sure you understand the different, not only active main or active battle, but also same thing with counters, right? Because you have counters on play, you have counters on attack, and that's another big thing too, right? That's a big difference, whether it's one or the other. So.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Anything else you can think of that you would want to master? Make sure you have a solid understanding of it.
Yeah, I think for me, like, see what I'm struggling with. Like a lot of it's just like wording issues that can be interpreted differently. So I wouldn't know if that would fall under like this category per se or like another segment, but more so like I guess the wording I can is definitely different from what other card games we might be used to. So like in Super, we don't see the word discard ever. We have place from your hand to the drop area, where common lingo for certain things would be like discard a card, do X instead of like place one card. Like I know for me, wording is very I guess tangible in the sense that where certain words I kind of like look into and I guess maybe overanalyze and maybe in this game is not as I guess like different in a sense because like place versus play, for example, like place in the play versus play it. In this game doesn't really mean much difference, but in Pan Z it made a difference because certain effects would only get their effect if you play it as opposed to if it's come placed into play. And it might be that way for other card games. So to know like certain wording like that, it's something that I have to try and I guess get used to that can kind of affect with rulings. But I think for the most part, I have a good grasp and understanding and a lot of people I talk to as well, they have a good idea of how the game kind of flows. It's just like certain wording and syntax, kind of is a lot different.
Right. Well, I think that's the beauty of this game is that it's not a very difficult, it's not a very complex game on the surface, right? And there are complex rulings, and there will be in any game, right? And as sets come out, it's going to get more and more complex. But it's a very straightforward game, which I love it, But there's so much skill involved too, which makes it such a complex and amazing game. So I agree. I don't think there's tons of things that stick out, like a game like Magic would be, or something where you have like 2 main phases and the battle step and all this stuff. But yeah, I would definitely something else we briefly talked about. Make sure you guys understand the way the battle works too. That's something that's important. Make sure you understand when the counter timing comes up, when autos trigger, when your blockers come up, and then how the battle step works as well. So okay, so let's move on to the next thing that we want to talk about this week, which was common mistakes that we see players make from a judging standpoint. And I will for sure go first with this because I'll tell you, man, there is this happens all the time, and it's actually a little bit of a pet peeve with me. And I always feel like I'm being kind of mean when I point this out because it seems so irrelevant. But it is really important to understand this, and that is that your autos don't trigger until after negates happen. And so if let's say I attack with, Kaba is always the perfect example, right? And then my opponent goes, cool, I want to counter that, or I want to negate that. Then after that, I can choose to take my card or not. But what happens a lot of the times, I see people attack with Kaba and just take their card. And it doesn't seem like a big deal. Same thing with their leader attack. They'll attack with their awakened leader and just draw a card. And it's like, but it is a huge deal because you could draw, like currently in the game, right? If you're playing yellow, you could draw a bad ring laser from that draw, okay? And if you do that, if you just attack and draw a bad ring laser, now you have it, you didn't have it before, and then I go, okay, well, I'll counter that, and then you're like, oh, I'll use bad ring laser to stop that counter. You actually shouldn't have that card in your hand, and so you shouldn't be allowed to make that play. Do you know what I'm talking about, Aaron? Do you understand?
Yeah, 100% agree, and I again, it's the habits of we see auto effects, so we think it automatically happens, so which I understand we kind of created bad habits without kind of understanding the rules of the game first. But I see a lot of people still do that, and it's a habit that they need to break, especially when it comes into competitive play, because that's easily, some kind of offense that someone can really get them on for breaking the rules. Not to mention, if you draw the card, when you attack and then you shuffle your hand, that's an automatic game loss because there's irreparable game state. You can't confirm what card you drew off of it. So it can literally lose you games, like if you shuffle or whatever the case may be. So, you just want to kind of avoid that. Just take it step by step. I know a lot of people and the common mistakes is just because, when you play with your friends, you're not as, serious sometimes unless it's some kind of big tournament. So a lot of, I guess, lackadaisical effects of play or styles of play kind of just happen naturally because, it's casual. But to know when you're playing, you really kind of want to do everything step by step and in perfect sequence because, you don't want to kind of miss a trigger base or do something where you can really get in fault for. Another thing I see people do is they draw and then they enter the main phase and they realize, oops, I forgot to charge my energy. In this game it's optional. So as the opponent, how do I know you were just doing that, because that was part of your plan or you just forgot, So things like that, might be a mistake to you, but I might see it as like, oh, maybe he doesn't want to charge the energy. Maybe he wants to keep a card in his hand, whatever the case may be. So, and even people who put their energy not upside down, but like as if they're playing a card. I think that's a common mistake too, in my opinion.
I agree. No, I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal. Like, I don't like, but I do think that in competitive play, I think there will probably be some sort of, guidelines where you have to have your board a certain way. I've even seen people put their shields like where you would put your characters at, like to put them up front. I guess you did that in a game like I think you did that in Kaijudo or something. I've seen people play their shields like that, and I was like, it doesn't bother me. It's fine, I understand, but I agree that I think especially your energy being upside down because you don't know like is that boo in play or is it a energy? I don't know. You know what I mean? So I think it could be a mistake moving forward for sure.
Yeah, you just don't want to give your opponent any ammunition or any reason to have them like I wouldn't say rule shark, but just point out something that says, hey, this is questionable. I don't know, like if the energy is in the position, that, where you play battle cards, someone can easily say like, oh, why is your battle card there? It's like, oh, that's not my battle card, it's my energy. Well, how do I know? Because they can easily like, someone can easily just kind of shock you and say, oh, it's just pushed further back or something like that. It's just another annoyances that, anyone can kind of use. And you don't want to give your opponent any ammunition to kind of use against you. So for me, like I'm more the stickler of, okay, put it upside down, just so that way there's no quarrels or anything later down in the road, and everything is distinctly clear of where everything is. Here's my energy is clearly, upside down. It's, here's my life. It's clearly on the side away from my leader or whatever the case may be. So you just want to make sure that everything is very clear and concise. So that way, your opponent doesn't have any reason to kind of call you out on something. And, and you don't want that because it takes time. They can use it as a tactic to maybe frowse you up and have you misplayed, so that way they can try and get some advantage. I've seen it all the time. So you really just want to kind of be careful with how you play and how things are structured.
No, for sure. We have a couple questions. One is there a public knowledge term in DBS? Aaron, do you want to answer that?
Is there a public? I can't recall. I believe so. I think there is a rule in that like the discard pile is like public knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
Stuff
I think how it is in the rule book is it doesn't say like these things are public knowledge and then list them. It just kind of essentially says like it'll tell you about your hand and then like in the sub point it'll be like this is public knowledge and or your players can ask you what this is or whatever. But there isn't like something like it's not labeled I guess like a law term, like it's not like this is all public knowledge. Like for now on this will be referred to as public knowledge. It's just like it just tells you the different parts and says it is. The next question is it a must to have energy upside down? We just kind of talked about that. I don't know. What do you think, Aaron? Do you think, I think
in the rule book, it actually says you have to have it upside down.
Okay.
I don't know the exact like source verbatim, but they tell you that the energy needs to be played upside down. Again, casually, people don't like it like that, right side up. I know. But I'm just saying just for your sake in like competitive tournament, you just don't, again, want your opponent to give you a reason to say, oh, how do I know that's not upside down and not an actual battle card or whatever the case is. So
Yeah, this says on the layout discussion, seems like they should follow the Bandai supplied game mat. Battle cards out front, combo cards behind, then energy. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you guys, to be honest, every time I learn a new game, I always lay my stuff out exactly how it tells me to do in the manual or whatever, just like Aaron's saying, just to make sure I don't get rule shark later or, something doesn't happen. Because if you start making bad habits early, it's really hard to break them. Actually, I was teasing one of my friends who got into the game. He was his first trading card game he ever played, and when he played his energy, he played them off like right side up. And I waited like 2 or 3 days, and I was like, hey, by the way, those are supposed to be upside down. And he's like, I will never remember to do that now. Like, I always want to play those the other way. And I'm like, just like, just teasing him and stuff. But, he has it down now, and it's a good thing to get into. You want to make sure that you always do it the best, like the way you're supposed to. That way you don't have to break bad habits later.
Exactly, and that's the main thing, just for your safety. It's not like, we're like picking on you to say like, follow the rules, or it's more so guidelines just to help you in competitive environment that it just makes it easier for you, just for your benefit kind of thing. So I agree.
All right, awesome. So is there any other common mistakes that you see, Aaron, that you can think of?
Yeah, another one, a big one is so cards like Sensu Bean, for example.
Okay.
When the card is played and after it resolves, it goes to the drop area. A lot of people stick it by their leader underneath it so they can remind them that it gets a plus 5K. Technically, it's not allowed. Okay. As much as, to help both players remember, that's another part of just card game skill, I guess, in a sense, where, players have to remember their effects. And, in the rule book, it says, once the Sensible Bean's been, like an extra card's been activated, and everything like that, and resolved, it goes straight to the drop area. So, little things like that, of course, like we all, again, in locals and stuff, we just use it to help remind and everything like that. But technically, in actual gameplay, it doesn't, belong attached to the leader or anything like that, So little things like that, it could get by in, like, again, friendly, casual kind of thing, but to remember in actual competitive play that it does technically go to the drop area. And a person who says, hey, the card goes to the drop area, they're not really sharking you. They're just telling you, like, hey, this is technically, a rule that it, is supposed to go there. Or even some people who put like Broly's ring and attach it under their Broly leader.
Sure.
That's another thing. It technically was supposed to be in a battle area because, again, there could be some cards down the road that says destroy a card in the battle area. And if, this Broly's ring is under your leader, it's so easy for someone to forget kind of thing. And it can cause, some more mayhem. So you just kind of want to stick to the rules, not to be like a stickler or like the warden or something like that, but just, again, to play the game, I would say properly, but kind of along the lines that it has by the rule book, so that way it just makes it easier for you. That way you can kind of break those bad habits.
No, for sure. I'll tell you. I mean, I'm real bad about that. It's with the Sensu Bean thing. I do it all the time. Like, I always leave it out to remind my opponent. And I'll tell you, I was playing on Octagon a couple of days ago, and I did that. And my opponent used Jocko, and he was like, "Can I bounce the Sensu Bean?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. So like, it's not actually there." And he's like, "Well, it's right there." And I'm like, I mean, I understand. I'm sorry, it's my fault, right? But it's actually not supposed to be there. So like, yeah, you're right. It definitely can cause complications. What would you think about doing something like if I made like a Sensu Bean acrylic token, and whenever you use Sensu Bean, you can put the acrylic token on your guy? Do you think that would be allowed through the rules? Something like that, like a reminder, something like
down
that?
The road, if they can use like some kind of markers and stuff like that, I think that would definitely be helpful to remember certain effects. Kind of like how Pokemon has like to remember like burn and like different status elements,
GX token and stuff like that.
Yeah, so if Bandai allows it in the rules, for sure. As of now, like I don't want. Obviously, it's not allowed if it's not in the rule book, and it's probably another thing that your opponent can be like, "Oh, what's that supposed to be? Is that like, are you counting die? Are you stacking like is this to count like how like It's just so. But if it's something in the future that might be implemented, definitely for sure.
Awesome.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you, I have one. That's something I see people mess up a lot. Is they take notes during the game. Because in a lot of other games that you play, you're allowed to take notes. Magic's a big one. If I look at your hand with like the Frieza card, I'm allowed to write down all the cards in your hand so I know. In this game, you're absolutely not allowed to do that. And I've actually noticed a lot of games recently have been changing that ruling to stop you being able to write cards, that you see. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know in Pan Z they allowed note taking, and it's something that a lot of players didn't really do that often. And Timothy the Batau, who's probably one of the best Pan Z players, he took notes all the time, and it does help
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think it's also a good way to kind of, I wouldn't say like merit skill, but it's like a different layer because sometimes you're so focused on the game you kind of forget what your opponent has, and the notes help in that regard. Also, it helps know like maybe how many copies they might have or some kind of other estimate. So it kind of gauges what probability wise what they might have left in their deck or their hand and whatnot.
Yeah,
I know in this game is absolutely not allowed for sure.
Right, right. And you can use it with a lot of things too. Like if you play out the 7-drop Goku, I mean the 1-drop Goku, and look at the top 7, if your opponent goes and gets, a card, especially in the Vegito decks now, in Magic, for example, you could write down what card they got. So like that's one card in their hand for sure I can worry about. But in this game, you just absolutely can't do it. Ginyu's another good example, where I remember I played against one of my buddies and I used Ginyu's ability and I showed a 0-cost combo card. I put it in my hand, and about 3 turns later, he was like, if you have a 0-cost combo card, I lose. And I was like, wait, I do, right? And he's like, well, I don't know that you do. It's like, but I showed you with game. Like you should know. Why do you not? So like, you're right. It definitely can make the game a little bit more. It help people remind each other, but it kind of stinks it's not allowed. But I can also understand why it's not allowed too. So
yeah, maybe they might change in the future because I think it's probably like also a Japanese kind of card game. I guess I'd say mindset or like a system because I'm not sure how many Japanese card games you can actually take notes in. I'm not sure if Final Fantasy you're allowed to, or Buddy Fight, or Card Fight Vanguard, or White Schwartz,
no idea.
Or in Yu-Gi-Oh you can't either. I don't think. I think you used to, but they took that away. And then I don't even know if you consider Pokemon like a Japanese card game, but for the most part, majority of them don't. I mean, I'm fine. I like taking notes. I mean,
Me too.
Even though they don't have it in this game, it's not the end all be all because like Pansy was the first game I actually played that actually had no taking to be allowed. But I think I guess they try to prevent people from possibly cheating or like have an extra tool for them to cheat. I don't really see how, but I can see why.
Yeah, this is another good question, and this is actually something I think is kind of ridiculous as well. It says, I think it's absurd that they ruled that when you deck search with Frieza's Call, you aren't allowed to figure out what is in life. And then they goes on to talk a little bit more about it. Like Bulma, if you play Bulma, go get a Whis, right? You're not allowed to look and see what all is in your deck. You're supposed to get the first Whis that you come upon and then put it out. What do you think about that? I mean, like, is that actually enforceable? Like, what do you like?
Yeah, I think they should just do away with that completely.
I agree.
I understand that you want to make sure like the game has integrity and players have integrity, but when players search all the time, good players would always like they see the copy of the card, but they wouldn't fetch it out yet because they want to see like maybe other possibilities of cards that they might have, like other ratios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, like if you play Bulma, right, and you go look at Whis, you want to know how many more Whis in your deck, so you know how many Bulmas you can play, right? Like
exactly,
right? You know what I mean? Like, but like in my mind, why I think this rule is so weird is because it just seems unenforceable to me. Like, how do you know that I skipped one? And if you do say that I skipped one, what's it to me to just be like, oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry, I missed it. I was going through trying to go through real fast. It seems like a time saving rule to me. Like they don't want people like searching through their decks and like trying to calculate every single card. But like, what do you think? What do you think about this, man? What do you think? What would you?
Yeah, I mean, with cards, it's also probability, right? So you're just trying to like understand, and weighing in the probability of certain cards and whatnot, and it gives you just more information for yourself. And it's cool because what that allows you to do is it allows you to make plays based on like your information that and I think it overall brings it to like the game to like a psychological battle in a sense that okay, I know that I have X amount of copies. My opponent doesn't know. So it allows you to kind of play a game that your opponent can't really like interact with in a sense. That really kind of also helps in your favor to a slight degree. So I mean, again, the main reason is because it's like you said, it's like really unenforceable. Like there's no way to really know or really account for it. So like, what's the point of having it there? If it's a rule that I can understand that like it is enforceable, I can maybe see it, but the fact that it's not at all, it's just kind of like a waste of a rule and a waste of time.
I agree. Actually, Chris brings up a really smart point I didn't think of. He says, if you have multiple of a card's name in the deck, who's to say that you were going for that specific card? And that's very true. So like now we have a new Whis that's out. We have a new 4-drop Whis that's a blocker now. And so I can play Bulma and be like, okay, I'm going to search. and someone's like, hey, you didn't get your first Whis, and be like, oh, I was going for the blocker. And then once you get to the blocker, you'd be like, nah, I decided to go back, get the energy guy. You know what I mean? Like, you could just say that. You could be like, oh, I keep changing my mind. That's very true. It's actually really smart. I never thought about that. Like, it just seems like
a really good point.
Yeah, it's a very clunky rule, I think, honestly.
Yeah, I might bring it up to Ben, honestly, and just give him an example of, like, this rule just makes no sense. Just a rule that literally just makes no sense.
It's a little weird to me. All right, so another thing I see a lot of common mistakes that happened in my last store championship I went to. I had a lot of people that didn't realize that the zero-cost combo cards only last the turn. We talked about this before, but essentially that the zero-cost combo card says, give this card 10,000 power for the turn. It's actually talking about the card and not your leader or whatever you combo it on. Have you run into this problem as well?
Yeah, a lot of people will just kind of leave that card there and say, because they see the turn and they think, okay. But the reason for that is because eventually, like, when you combo, for people who don't know, and this is another thing too, another common mistake to kind of piggyback of what you said, is when people combo, they just put the card in the combo area and they put it to the drop area right away. And when you combo, first of all, you combo one at a time. And then secondly, the cards stay there. So we have cards like Jocko that bounces a card in the combo area back to your hand. We might even get a card that says, when this card is comboed on your turn, decrease the power of a card in your opponent's combo area by 5,000 or something like that. So cards, when you combo, stay there for a reason, because that card specifically says for the turn, because we might have cards later down the road that might nullify maybe an effect in your opponent's combo area, and the card is still there until more so that battle. The reason why it says turn is, I think, more so because when you combo, it stays there until like the battle's over. So I mean, like I said, it's like a weird word, but yeah, that's another common mistake I see people do for sure.
I think that's sufficient. Do you have any more common mistakes you see?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. Definitely when people combo, they just put it in a drop area right away. That's a huge one. And then I think, nothing more than that really. Just like common mistakes, more so like, which we'll probably get about later, is more so like sequence wise with like certain like rulings and stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think I have one more, and it'll be the last one, and that's blocker timing. I see a lot of people. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to attack with my guy, and they're like, okay, I'll block it, and they just like kill their guy and put him in the discard pile.
Yes.
It's like whoa. Like, we have like 3 steps to get to first. Because and then after the blocker step, you still do combos. Yeah, so that's really important too. A lot of people, after they block, like they'll attack, no negates, and then autos will trigger, and then they'll do blockers, and then just put their guy in the graveyard or whatever. And it's like, you could save it if you want to. You can combo and save it. Plus, I can combo if I want to, and like maybe do something to kill one of your other guys or something. I can use like the Gotink's combo card and maybe kill one of your other guys off of that combo. Or use Sensu Bean. Also same thing about Sensu Bean too. You don't have to combo it on the person you play. That's another thing I've noticed a lot of people. You can once you use Sensu Bean, you can Sensu Bean something else in play, which is important. So that's like something to remember. But yeah, that's something I've noticed a lot of people, they don't understand the block timing very well. It happens after autos, so Beerus could kill a blocker before it can block. For example, things like that.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I thought of 2 more.
Here we go.
Yeah. So one of them is again, a lot of these are casual kind of habits that we just pick up just to save time because it's not a competitive thing, but even like tapping energy. So when it comes to cards like Sensu Bean, we never really like pay the energy cards because we see like, okay, it just untaps, so you're really just untapping 1 instead of paying 1, untapping 2, which does make a huge difference actually, because it's so easy for your opponent to just say, oh, you untapped 1, but you never paid the cost for Sensu Bean. It's so easy for them to shark you because they just see you untap 1 but never really see you pay the cost for it, kind of thing. And that can really lead you into a lot of trouble. So a lot of cards like, Results of Training, Go Tanks, cards that untap energy, you want to make sure that you actually pay the cost first, because that is a big deal. Because again, we might even have some cards that down the road I can see like, okay, once you pay the cost for something, whatchamacallit, negate the effect of an extra card.
You talking about the blue counter? The Winston Excursion? Is that what you're talking about?
No, just like in general, like if my opponent plays Sensu Bean, and let's say they make a card that says negate the effects of an extra card or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. you have to pay the cost first, so you always still want to pay the cost, even though we all know, like, okay, in taps 2, you always want to pay and kind of fulfill and do everything kind of step by step. So don't just kind of take it for granted that, okay, like, results of training, cost 5, I in tap 4, so I can really just, tap 1, no, because then I can say, well, you only tapped 1 for results of training, like, you can't do that,
Right.
kind of thing, so you don't want to get into the habit of too much of that. And again, this is just all to protect you guys who are listening out there. So when it comes time for tournament play, again, you don't want to give your opponent any ammunition or any reason to kind of rule shark you. So when you're doing some kind of effect that untaps energy, make sure you pay the costs for the card first, because that's important. Especially like if I play Go Tanks and I just tap 3 energy because it untaps 2, but you play Bloodlust, it's like, wait a second, tap all your energy first, and then kind of do that. So it's going to definitely matter, I think, as more future sets come on, because I can see a lot of interactions with a lot of certain effects that can be happening. So you always want to just pay the cost for the card first and then resolve the effect.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question that says, so is it pay cost first, then play card? Technically, I think how it's supposed to be played is you actually set the card out, and then you pay its cost. Correct, Aaron? Is that?
Yeah, you actually like reveal the card and you declare the card that you're playing, and then you pay the cost for the card, or the energy cost, with the specified energy, of course, first. So if it's like 2 cost card, it's like blue, and it costs like 1 blue, you have to pay the 1 blue and whatnot. So you basically, when you actually play a card, you actually don't just play it. You actually like reveal it, declare that you're going to play the card, tap the energy, and then play it down.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So any more common mistakes, man? Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, the last one is you awaken. So when people awaken, some people just think, okay, awaken, draw 2. And it doesn't work like that, so which definitely changes a lot of things, because you're drawing 2 extra cards, which can change, everything. So when people awaken, they have to know like the timing of when they can awaken. So basically, let's say if I'm turn player and my opponent is at 4 life and I attack, I declare my attack. Any of my auto, like when attacking stuff, like pending autos will trigger, or at least will go into pending state. My opponent can then counter or respond with a counter, and then my autos would trigger, and then I would go into the, I'll do my comboing, and then my opponent can then, during his or her combo step, they can do anything. They can play a combo, a card to combo with, and then awaken. They can awaken first and combo. They can do a different combination of that. So it's not just like, okay, it's, I'm turn player, you have 4 life, I draw for turn, you automatically awaken. It's not like that. If it was right. Yu-Gi-Oh, that would be a different case, because you can activate stuff in different phases, but it's not Yu-Gi-Oh, so it's not like just because you meet the requirement, you can just kind of activate it. Awaken, it's a specific timing of, doing that in your combo step, because you meet, I guess, defense step, I should say, because there's no such thing as a combo step technically.
Right, definitely. Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on to the last segment here, which is set 2 rule changes. So this is pretty cool. We had a bunch of new stuff come out with set 2. We've seen a bunch of erratas. We've seen a bunch of ways that certain cards work, some clarifications of some cards. The one I'll start off talking about, because it makes me very mad. I'm not mad, but it makes me very sad, is the way tokens are being handled. I was very excited for Chilled. I could not wait to see them. They kept teasing me with the token reveals, and then it turns out tokens are 0 cost, which really stinks, because they can just get murdered by like Bardock and Kel and Goku, essentially any green card apparently. Just so many different things can kill them, wipe them out, which it really stinks. And they're also colorless too, which stinks as well. So like the ghost tokens won't get the buff from the promo Goku, for example. What do you think, man? What's some other rule changes you saw that's you think are pretty important?
Yeah, I mean, mainly the tokens. Apparently with the Goten and Trunks ruling, that they can be activated from the hand.
Yeah, where's that ruling at? I actually tried to find that ruling before the show started. I couldn't find anything. Was it email ruling? Is that what it was?
Yeah, so I can tag you in it.
Yeah, please do.
Someone asked a question, and then some people were saying, no, it's on the field because it's activate main. And some people were, just because the way it was kind of worded, it seemed like you can activate it from the hand, which we never I don't think they had that many effects that can activate from the hand, that not that I know of anyway.
Mhm.
So then I showed an email from someone they sent to me earlier in the day, that band I said it does activate from the hand, and then someone sent, sorry, another email that said that it activates on the field, but then 20 minutes later corrected it and said that it activates from the hand. So
Okay, so do you have to
it's
pay the cost, or you just play it out? Like you
I
just
think
literally you just ditch it essentially, and
yeah,
you go
you
get.
just ditch it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And is the Mighty Mask thing the same thing then too?
I have
Can
to
you
read that one. I'm not too familiar on that one.
yeah, that's the one that it says essentially you do the same thing. You pitch it, and then you go get a Goten or Future Trunks, or I guess Trunks Youth maybe card.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it's worded the same way, then I don't see why not. But you have to definitely look at it again. So far as I know, Gotenks and the Trunks both can activate from the hand.
Yeah, I'll look it up while you're talking, so that way
Yeah.
I'll know for sure. Because I know a lot of people. I mean, it's just it's weird to me that it works out of hand. I don't know. I just feel like that's not supposed to be how it. What do you think? I mean, do you?
I mean, the way it sounds, because it's like this card and one other card from your hand, but it can be interpreted two different ways, right? Because you see it's activate main, so you can be like, okay, you sack this card to the drop
Right.
area and ditch one card from your hand to get X effect.
I mean, that's absolutely how I read it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I do this card and
you
I
know,
choose one from my hand, right?
yeah,
That's really weird to me.
you know, yeah. Go ahead.
How about the Mafuba ruling? I know you've had some choice words for that.
Yeah, so um, basically the whole Mafuba ruling, the reason why I was kind of defending that it should trigger, should not trigger like your opponent's auto effects, is simply because in the rule book, when your opponent attacks, they choose like a target, and then you choose to play a counter, and then your opponent's autos would then activate after the counter step. And even if your opponent plays a counter, your opponent's autos would still activate. But this is all after the counter window. But the real reason why I was kind of saying that Mafuba shouldn't work is because when you attack, and this is like a weird explanation, a lot of the stuff is basically, this is all from the rule book. I'm not just like kind of just making up because I'm just like biased and want it. Like everything I'm saying is straight out of like, I'm just quoting it from the rule book. So I think I have it memorized right now because I've been like replying to people so many times with like the same thing. But I think in section like 8-7 something, basically when you attack, what happens is the way the autos work is they automatically trigger once the condition is fulfilled. So if a card just says like when this card attacks your leader, since the battle card attacked your opponent's leader, like Gotenks, for example, that fulfillment has already been fulfilled because it fulfilled the condition of attacking the leader. So it's auto activates, and then what happens is it becomes pending, basically on standby. Now what happens next is then I can choose to activate a counter and resolve my counter card. Then after that, any pending autos, basically that are on standby, my opponent can choose a pending auto and activate it. And that's, I think, rule that's in section 874, where it says, your opponent can choose, or the player can choose any pending autos, and they can choose to, and they have to activate. It's not even optional; it's mandatory that they have to activate the auto. So what my argument was that when, let's say Gotenks, for example, that the 3-drop that discards a card from their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say if they attack my opponent's leader, they fulfill the requirement of, okay, I'm attacking my opponent. So therefore, the fulfillment's required, so the auto triggers and becomes pending, basically on standby. Now I get to respond with my counter. So if I respond with Mafuba, then Mafuba goes on top of the Gotenks, becomes a blank card. Now the pending auto, or the auto, is still in standby. So now my opponent has to activate the pending auto, which is rule 874. But at this point, the counter has already resolved, which is in this case Mafuba, which says your opponents can activate their skills. So I was arguing that Mafuba, even though it doesn't stop the initial pending auto, the fact that after the counter, my opponent has to activate the auto again, and I figured by that time Mafuba is attached, so therefore they can't activate that that pending auto. And actually, Rule 874 is very important because that's the section where auto skills actually activate and resolve. It's not when the card attacks. It's more so when after the counter, they can choose to activate the pending skill, and after it's activated, then it resolves. So that step is very important because that's after the counter window, which I was telling people, like, look, my argument was like, it makes sense with every other ruling that we've had with full power energy and Kaba. Not because,
that's what I was going to say. You know, because of that, you know what I mean? Like, if full power energy kills Kaba, then like the Mafuba should stop the auto from whatever you Mafuba. In my opinion, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, you know, it's a little bit different, but it's essentially the same concept.
Well, basically, based on the example I gave you with Mafuba and, like, you know, Gotenks, for example, the reason why full power energy works in Kaba is not because Kaba so much attacked and the fact that he's still attacked is because Rule 8 or Section 874 states that your opponent or your player can choose any pending autos and activate it. Thing is that the counter, which is full power energy in this case, doesn't negate the skill. So what happens is Kaba attacks, his condition is fulfilled because he attacked a leader. So his now auto triggers, it becomes pending. Then I choose to respond with full power energy. I negate the attack, I destroy Kaba, but that auto is still floating, is still on standby. So then therefore I choose to activate that auto and resolve that auto. And that's all because of 874. Right. Now, in the case of Mafuba, it says, you know, negate the activation, and not. I'm more on the side of, like, it's not negating the initial activation because that would always like trigger and become pending, but more so in 874 where my opponent has to choose the pending auto and activate it. So it's more so the second activation of the auto is for me why I felt like Mafuba should stop skills from being activated, because the second activation, 874, is the reason why all auto skills activate and resolve. It's in that step that's probably the most important step, and for those who don't know about that, should definitely look it up in the rule book because it's after the counter window. And in full power energy Kaba case, full power energy doesn't negate doesn't negate the activation of autos. It just negates the attack. But Mafuba is different because it negates the actual activation. And so that's why I'm actually emailing Bandai about, because basically, let's say if the auto still would trigger, what is that section 874? What's the purpose of activating the auto again? What does that really mean? You know, so some people are saying that it's different wording, that they didn't mean to say activate. I don't know that. I'm just reading the rulebook. Right. The same way you're reading it based on how you're using it to justify it doesn't work. You know, I'm using it to justify the way it does work or should work in that case. So it's kind of confusing, but basically, again, to recap for those who are kind of like lost in the whole thing, autos, if you read it by the rulebook, activate twice. One to fulfill the condition, to make it pending, basically on standby, and then another after counters resolve. That's why, again, Beerus would work even if you use coercion, because you attack with Beerus, you fulfilled his condition because he attacked the leader, so his ability is on standby. You negate with Whis, that activation of the auto carries over after the counter window, and then they choose to activate that pending auto that was initially there. And the reason why I'm saying that Mafuba should stop the activation of auto skills is because since after you attack, I played a Mafuba. Then when you try to activate the auto a second time, Mafuba's already attached, which says, you know, you can't activate auto skills or activate skills.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a very interesting question, which I hope gets answered. I'm sure that have you thought about like messaging Bandai about it and talked to them about it? Have you sent one out or?
Yeah, I sent an email to the site where everyone else sends their emails, and again, you know, the issue is with like dealing with people from foreign countries and stuff. You know, less is more. So the less you say,
Right.
the easier it is for them to understand and kind of digest. You got to think of like, if you're going to a foreign country, the more words you ramble on, the less someone can really try and understand or even understand like what you're trying to say. But if you say like bits and pieces here, they're able to digest and understand it. So I don't know if they're even going to answer me because when I sent them the email, I basically stated I quoted the rule book word by word, word for word, and said, what I just kind of did in my whole like 20-minute monologue about Mafuba of like, in this section 874, it says that any auto pending abilities, the player has to activate it. But in Mafuba's case, it's already attached to the battle card. So how can they activate the pending auto if Mafuba is already active on the battle card, which says, skills can't be active. So I try to like phrase it in a way that was like easy for them to understand, but also try and get my point across of like, hey, this is what it says in the rule book, and try and, maybe explain it or give me some kind of answer. But I feel like, the more I say, they're kind of looking at me like, I don't know. All they see is just autos activate Mafuba. Mafuba doesn't stop it kind of thing, so.
Yeah, so let's get back to the Mighty Mask situation here. And so what's Trunks and Goten say is they say, place this card and one other card from your hand in the drop area. Okay, and it has like a little semicolon and says the rest of the effect. What Mighty Mask says is place this card in the drop area. And it has a little semicolon. So it's really weird because it essentially starts out the same. Mm-hmm. So it says place this card in the drop area, which is essentially what the Goten's and Trunks says. But the difference is it says place this card, and then it says and one other card. And then it says from your hand in the drop area. So maybe the confusion was what it's trying to say is it's trying to say like place this card in your hand and one other card from your hand. Like, what I mean? Like maybe they just clumped it together with like maybe poor translation. Like, what do you think? Like,
yeah, and what it is too is like I think for those who, again, I always kind of go back to Yu-Gi-Oh because that was like my first experience with anything competitive card game wise, as well as wording with certain words. And Yu-Gi-Oh, they have something called PSCT, which is problem solving card text, and it's basically words that basically universal words that are in the game that players can look at and easily understand. Okay, this is what this means. Now, again, the issue what Bandai uses says plays this card and one other card from your hand. If Bandai had, problem solving card text or just kind of like clean up their syntax, if they said discard this card and one other card from your hand, that would just make it clear as day. They would know, okay, this card activates from the hand, not from because when it says place, what does it mean? Place from the hand or place from the field? Because it plays a lot of ambiguous text. Discarding, is mainly used for the hand. So if they even just made it to, discard this card from your hand and this discard this card and one other card from your hand to search your deck for whatever, there will be no question. But the problem is cards like place, like where, what, it's so that's really a lot of the ruling issues or questions about certain cards is really just the word choices that Bandai chooses to use that aren't, again, we're not really familiar with, where other cards might say, sacrifice this card. Okay, we know that you have to sacrifice it from your hand, from the field. Or, discard this card. Again, Bandai doesn't use the word discard. They just say place into the drop area. Right. Which, again, especially being on activate main, it's so easy for anyone to interpret that, okay, you pay the cards for the Goten, you sack him off, and one card from your hand to search. So if they just use words like discard, either sacrifice, easier wording to really separate the fact that this is what this means and this is what that means.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'll tell you, from a game design standpoint, I know a lot of people know I've talked about a lot on my YouTube channel, but, I do a lot of game design stuff in my free time. I love doing stuff, and I love creating games and stuff. And that's one thing I pay a lot of attention to when I make cards or make, rules, is making sure that all the terminology, is consistent throughout the game. Because like you said, if you have a card that says something like, when you play this card, this happens, and then you have another card that says search your deck and put a card from your deck into play. Well, is that playing it? You know, like, you know,
Yeah.
is that playing it? Is that the same thing? I don't know. It doesn't say that. It says put it into play. That's not the same as playing it. You know, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think this game suffers a lot from that, where, you know, it'll say place, but what is place? It's not really defined anywhere. It's not in the rule book or anything. Does place mean play it? Does place mean not? Like, if I have a card, like, let's say Bibbidi, for example. Bibbidi says, when you play this card, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose, you know, 2 red cards of 25,000 or less and put them into play. If they print a card that says place a card from your discard pile into your battle area, does that count as playing it? Is placing it the same thing as playing it? You know, we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's a very good point.
If it's the same thing, why have one over the other kind of thing? You know,
right. Is it just wording? Is it just like, you know, they just type one instead of the other? You know, who knows? You know, it's very
yeah. So I think what this actually does is, I guess, a blessing in disguise, right? So still early in the game. I think these changes should happen immediately, just so that we have a clear distinction of, you know, again, in this game, place versus play doesn't matter. But again, someone who doesn't know that would see, okay, well, there's 2 different words. They must have 2 different meanings, right?
Because why would they use both? Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's little things like that that really can confuse, especially like a new person, especially how easy they're trying to make the game approachable to new players. They should also take that with the wording, right? So even something like negate. So for us, you know, especially people come from different card game backgrounds, you know, negate means like nullify, to stop kind of thing. So that's why a lot of people didn't think that autos would work, because, okay, when this leader attacks, I negated your attack. Why would that work? You know, so using certain words to really like define what negate means, what just, you know, place means, what play means, like all these certain I guess verbs, I guess you should say, to really like clean those up and make a distinction of what they mean and how they really interact. Because once you have that solidified, you don't have to worry about the rest of your game, because now you know, okay, anytime we want to say, you know, they want to use a card effect from the hand, we'll say like discard or something like that. So for the most part, I know, and all card games I've played, like play would always be from the hand and place would always be something outside of it. So if you brought like a creature from your deck to the field, you know, you're placing it into play, as opposed to hard casting it, which is playing it from your hand. So I know in, again, Panini, cards that would get their effects would always get it if you play it, not if you place it into play. So you know, I think they should really just stick to one word and have that be like the blanket of all, not have like, so, because a lot of it's like ambiguous text. Another one was that Vados promo. When you read it, it says, you know, I was talking about. You know, and there was no way I would have known that card got the plus 5,000.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It sounds like the card you're attacking gets it.
Yeah, because it doesn't mention anything about that promo itself. It just says, you know, when your leader attacks a battle card, both cards gain plus 5,000.
Right.
So the subject is, you know, the battle card and the Vados leader, or the leader, not anything about the promo. You know, nothing about that card itself, because it never even mentioned it. It doesn't even say like, you know, Proud Spark Vados gets plus 5,000. It says, you know, when your leader attacks a battle card, both cards gain plus 5,000. No, you know, how, you know, so that's a huge, like,
that's a huge difference. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, all right, guys. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to go through to a quick Q&A here, and that's going to be it for the Supercast. You know, sorry we started so late, guys. Again, I apologize. And just to let you guys know, the Bearded Collectible guys are doing a case opening on their Twitch channel. So I will host at the end of this, so you guys can go over there. But the link is also in the channel. Also, do not forget to check out Aaron Anthony's YouTube page at Mr. Waffles. The link is down at the bottom. And if you guys have a little bit of free time and want to check me out on YouTube, the link is also at the bottom. Aaron, do you have anything else to say before the end of the cast here, man?
That's it. Just make sure, guys, again, when you're playing, just to, you know, announce what you're playing. Just play slow. Just, again, don't give your opponent any ammunition they can use against you and kind of try and shark you. Right. All right?
Yes, sir. Definitely. No, it's definitely true. And again, guys, you know, we'll have more of this as well. Hopefully, once the test actually comes out, we can actually sit down and talk about it too. Like maybe discuss the test, what questions we stumbled on, stuff like that, to get you guys even more prepared as well. All right, guys. I don't see any questions yet. Hey, DBZ United, coming in right at the end. All right, guys. Well, thank you again so much, guys, for watching. We really appreciate it. Aaron, thank you so much for being here, man. It's always a pleasure to have you. You are a fantastic guest, and I love having you on the channel, on the cast. It's awesome.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Awesome, guys. All right. Well, like I said, you can check out tomorrow. I have a special video up tomorrow, which is just a thank you video for all your guys' support. I've talked about it the last couple weeks, but I really wanted to make a video. You know, my goal for this year was to get 500 subscribers. Today, I hit 600 in 4 weeks. So I reached my goal in 3 weeks, guys, my yearly goal. And that's all because of your guys' love and support. And it really means a lot to me. Thank you all so much. It means the world. So we'll also have a special announcement as well for this week as well. So anything going on with you and your channel, Aaron?
Yeah, nothing yet. You know, I might just definitely do a box opening. I think that's where my channel kind of has to head towards, since you know, we have a lot of other great DBS content creators really doing a great job with everything that they're doing. So I probably might just stick to like maybe like box openings and like probably like deck profiles and stuff. You know, as much as I want to kind of get more in depth. That just takes some time, and especially with like the editing and stuff. But you know, look forward to definitely. I'm getting 3 boxes this weekend or this week, I should say. So can't wait to crack those open and start playing, because I have like sleeves that are just like ready to crack open.
And
I,
some of those set 2
you know,
cards.
I'm just like it's so weird, like card gamer like nerd mentality. Just like I just can't wait to sleeve my cards. You know, so.
For sure, for sure. Well, guys, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Guys, go check out Bearded Collectibles. I want to host them right now. Aaron, thank you so much for being here, dude. You're awesome. And I will see you guys next time.
Peace out, guys. Take care.